We are sitting in front of your dad's work, Donald Judd, and this exhibition is presented for the first time since 1989 in the same manner here at the David Zwirner Gallery. It was last presented in Baden-Baden in Germany like this, all the pieces together. How do you feel about it?
Well, the space is extremely different than the original space. The original space was kind of Baroque and decorative, and so it's almost as if it's a completely new way to see them. I think it's really important to get works together to see them grouped together so you can understand what the thinking was and what's happening. I think the idea came from my brother Flavin, and David was up for it.
How much did your father engage you in the process of his work as a daughter? Did he talk about his projects with you?
I was very busy with my own interests, like ballet and acting and film. And as a family, we had a lot of shared interests, books and food and travel, you know, things that can take up a lot of exciting time and energy. So I felt my relationship was more of a daughter and a friendship, and also a little bit of a rebel, because he would, you know, want to get congratulated on something, and I would, you know, give him a hard time, like, oh, I don't know if it's so great, and you know the way a teenage daughter can be a little mischievous, and sometimes I feel a little bad about how hard I was on him, but maybe that's what my role was, to be, you know, the one person who wasn't like, oh, that's great.
Yes, but there's always one person, a family like this. I think it needs to be like this, right? It's,
so I didn't give it up easy, so to speak, but I think one thing that was really great about my dad with my brother and I is that he, since we were really small, treated us and our friends as if we were intelligent people, and he had really rigorous conversations with us. I think dialogue with him was probably one of the most invaluable things, because I learned how to think on my feet and get ideas and not be scared of wondering about anything and everything. So it kind of encouraged a sense of thinking about the mystery of life. Or we would, for example, we went to Russia once in 1986, and we would stay up really late talking about what happened in 1453 in this little town, you know, looking at the history books. I think that kind of dialogue and play and intellectual stimulation is really great for kids.
Yeah, also a beautiful gift for you as his children. It's
nice, very memorable.
Like this. Yeah, very beautiful. You made the short documentary film Marfa Voices. There's a unique view of your father, Donald Judd. The film is presented this Saturday in the Zwirner Gallery here. When did you realize that you would like to make this film, and how long took it to put all together?
We had a woman working for us named Ellen Salpeter, who still helps out the foundation. And she had a friend in Marfa named Karen Bernstein, who had started working for the local radio station, which was a very big deal in Marfa to have its own radio station, Marfa Public Radio.
Okay.
Yay! And Karen had this idea of creating something called Marfa Voices. So the title was her idea, and she wanted to interview local people about Don. These people had never been filmed, and my background is film, and I felt very compelled to film these people. So we agreed that we would try to find as many 25, 30 people in a very short time, and we would videotape them. And we went in on it fairly ambitiously, and we did, I think, those interviews in July or August of 2006. And then we felt like we needed some New York perspective. The reason the foundation was interested in doing it is because we had a new executive director, and we wanted to have, you know, kind of a coming out, a bigger contribution to the community than we had ever had before, because we were always just, we opened up the spaces, but we just wanted something to give. So we edited like crazy and presented to the community on the weekend of the open house. There was this amazing moment where we had brought, for the first time since my dad passed away, so maybe it was 12 years, we brought the bagpipers from New York City, who the town knew, some of the town members knew. And when the Marfa Voices film ended, it was a surprise to them that the bagpipers started playing and they were there on stage. And so it was a very, a little bit more than just a screening, because it was kind of like...
Very emotional also.
Yeah, it was kind of like an event, and we were very pleased. But the material was still a little rough at that point, and it wasn't until last summer for the Icon Furniture Show, Judd Furniture Show in Birmingham, I think it's in Birmingham, that we decided to clean up the edit, and that's how we have the 25-minute version that we're showing on Saturday.
Do you feel very close to your father since he passed away 12 years ago? How is it emotional for you?
I guess always a point where you miss somebody when something special happens, or when you really need to talk to them. Like, hey man, where are you? I gotta talk to you. For my dad, he's so much part of my perspective on the world. I'm kind of fascinated by how a person is such a blend of the mother, the father, their own innate nature, and then obviously the community and the different people who you don't even know all the different people a single kid interacts with, because kids are so dynamic. So I guess it's a long way of answering the question, but I definitely feel close to him, but I also have opportunity to learn about things that he said or did. For example, this Blackwood film that's showing on Saturday, it took me forever to see that. I just saw it recently, and it's amazing. So there's always more to explore of a person. And somebody was asking me recently if, they used very nice words, but they were basically asking me if I was like, obsessed with my dad, or they were asking me if he was my muse. And I was thinking, no, I think it's just when you have somebody in your family or vicinity who's inspiring and interesting, rather than, you know, run off to Australia and study rocks. I'm interested in the fertile territory that I grew up in, and making new things out of what I'm familiar with, and kind of a sense of heritage.
You spent some time in Soho. You were raised in Soho, in this beautiful building your father bought for you as a family, as a living space, and also his art workspace. So you spent some years there, and then you moved to Marfa. How was that for you as a child? The different cultures, completely different environment, different people, different atmosphere. How was that for you?
I think it was a really great contrast. As a kid, the difference between being on an island with millions of people and then being in a little town where you can see for sometimes, 90, 100 miles and you can't see anybody, I think that kind of contrast just shifts your brain a little bit. You're very aware. Well, for one, I think you're very aware of the earth.
Yeah.
This is just in a basic way. In Marfa, there's a certain fishbowl quality to the sky, and then a curve going on with the earth, and the whole Texas spirit has a kind of independence, and whatever you can do. It's very empowering. But Soho also had a certain amount of freedom. It was very much like a village. There was the cheese store of Giorgio De Luca and Tony D'Appolito's Vesuvio's bakery. We were always going back and forth, so even though we moved, and I think it was a big change, to go to school in Texas, we still felt connected to Soho and New York City, and our mom was in New York City.
How was it in school for you? Was that difficult?
I think we had a rough quality, you know, like messy kids, kind of. And Marfa at that time, maybe more so than now, I haven't been back to the school, even though I've been back to Marfa, but there was a Hispanic community and the Anglo community, and the Anglo community was very clean cut and very 1950s conservative, mostly Border Patrol families, so there was a certain amount of properness, and I think I was interested in kind of more loose kids. And then when we moved back to New York, then we didn't exactly fit in to New York. But that's what happens with kids and moving.
Sure. How do you think, how much did being raised in this creative atmosphere affected your professional path? How much did you take of all these environment for your own profession?
Well, I remember having conversations with him about film. He wasn't that interested in having rigorous conversations with me about poetry I was writing or films I was making. So kind of dive into his world and know what you want to figure out and then come back out and go make your own thing. But there's a certain amount of freedom that it's a fine line between being good for you and being challenging.
Okay.
So I think it's been a process to make a synthesis for me of all the influences and all the goods. But I'm fine with a synthesis taking a long time.
Okay. Being president of the Judd Foundation, what are the goals and the mission of the foundation, and what does it personally mean for you?
But the mission of the Judd Foundation is to preserve the installed spaces of Don's, both in New York City and in Marfa, Texas. And there are 16 buildings in Marfa, and that includes 3 ranch houses. And then there's this huge project of the restoration of 101 Spring Street, which would be opening in 2013. Beyond preserving the installed spaces, we have a responsibility to, for example, like this show, really share the work with the public, create programming that allows people to understand his thinking and his other works like furniture, printmaking, architecture, his writings, help people understand even, I think, the context of the 60s, even late 50s, 60s, early 70s, what was going on, what people were thinking, what the community was, and Don's position in it. So we have a certain amount of legacy responsibility as well.
Which installation or piece of your father do you like best? Which is your favorite one?
I guess, I mean, really like bullnoses, but it's hard for me to say a favorite, but one piece that I would like to see again is a piece, huge plywood wall piece that he did, Peter Ballantyne built for him in 1982 for Leo Castelli Gallery on Green Street. And I think it's in the Saatchi collection, and maybe it's considered destroyed, which is something that Don called it. But it's a phenomenally complicated piece, and it spans a whole wall, like 80 feet, I think. So that's the one I would like to see.
Thank you so much for the interview. Thank you. It was really a pleasure
nice to meet you.
talking to you.